What if the next global crisis doesn't begin with a financial crash, but with a war over energy? A war where missiles don't just hit military targets, but oil fields, gas reserves, and global supply chains. A war where the real battlefield is the world economy. Right now, tensions involving Iran are raising serious questions. Can leadership assassinations actually end a war, or do they make the enemy stronger? And more importantly, what happens to the world if this conflict continues to escalate? Tonight, we break it all down. Not with speculation, but with analysis. The idea is simple. Remove key leaders, and the system collapses. This strategy, often referred to as decapitation, has been used in multiple conflicts. But in the case of Iran, experts argue something very different. Iran is not a fragile structure built around individuals. It is a system. A deeply institutionalized political structure with layers of governance, military command, and ideological continuity. Even officials themselves have publicly emphasized this point, that no single individual defines the system, and history supports this. Leadership losses do not necessarily mean collapse. In many cases, replacements emerge, sometimes even more effective than their predecessors, which raises a critical question. Is targeting leadership actually weakening Iran or forcing it to adapt faster? Let's move beyond the battlefield, because the real impact of this war is not limited to one region. It's global. Oil prices have already shown volatility. Analysts warn that if escalation continues, prices could rise dramatically, potentially crossing levels that trigger widespread inflation. But oil is only part of the story. There's something far less discussed and far more dangerous. Fertilizer. A significant portion of global fertilizer supply moves through critical maritime routes in the Middle East. Any disruption here means higher agricultural costs. Higher agricultural costs mean higher food prices. And higher food prices mean pressure on economies worldwide. This is how a regional war becomes a global crisis. In military strategy, there's a concept known as the escalation ladder. Each step represents a higher level of conflict. And right now, both sides appear to be climbing. Strikes are no longer limited to military targets. Energy infrastructure is increasingly at risk. Gas fields, oil installations, shipping routes. Each attack invites retaliation. Each retaliation raises the stakes. And here's the danger. Once critical infrastructure becomes the target, there is one location that could determine the future of this conflict. A narrow waterway through which a massive portion of the world's energy supply flows. If disrupted, the effects would be immediate. Oil prices surge, supply chains collapse, markets react, and beyond energy, there's another critical factor: agricultural inputs. Disruptions here don't just affect fuel, they affect food security. This is why analysts are watching this region more closely than ever before. Every war has an off-ramp, but not every war finds it. Diplomacy requires compromise, and compromise requires political risk. For global powers involved, making concessions could be seen as weakness. For regional players, accepting terms may be politically impossible. And for Iran, there's a belief that survival depends on resistance, which creates a deadlock, a situation where no side wants to escalate. Beyond governments and analysts, there's another powerful force shaping this conflict: public perception. Online discussions reveal strong, often emotional opinions. Some argue that global powers are driving instability. Others believe economic motives are influencing decisions. There are also debates about leadership decisions, trust in diplomacy, and the role of international alliances. It's important to approach these perspectives critically, because in modern conflicts, information itself becomes a battlefield. Not everything shared online is verified, but it does reflect real fears, real frustrations, and real uncertainty. No side is willing to step back. So where does this all lead? A prolonged conflict could reshape global economics, energy markets, food supply chains, political alliances. Everything becomes interconnected. And perhaps the most important takeaway is this: in modern warfare, the consequences are no longer contained. they ripple outward. A strike in one region can affect prices, policies, and people across the entire world. The question is no longer whether this conflict matters. It's how far it will go, and whether the world is prepared for the consequences. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for more deep investigations, because understanding the world has never been more important. This video is intended for educational and analytical purposes only. It does not promote violence, war, or political agendas. All opinions referenced are part of public discourse and are presented for critical discussion.